Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson, founder of Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection. Good to see you here today. It is December the 3rd, 2023, and my beautiful guest today is our astrologer, our resident astrologer and magnificent artist, George H. Lewis. Welcome, my love. How are you?
Really well, Dani. It's so nice to be back on your show again.
Thank you. I always find it funny when I hear the word back on your show. I just think I'm just so proud of my lovely channel. I just bring all my friends on, people I find fascinating. So before we get into this month's astrology, December, brilliant, prolific insight into that, and also the artwork that you're going to share with us today that you've done yourself by hand. Can you give us a little insight into the last time you and I saw each other, where it was, and the kind of things that happened, please?
Well, yeah, I mean, of course, GSIC, that was it's the second year and it was a great success. I just absolutely loved just being a witness to it all, meeting the lovely people and listening to the speakers. One just learned so much, from them all. It was very rewarding. And of course, I was also a vendor this year, sharing some of the magic of Shungaitan, in particular, the wellness blanket. So I had that side of things as well, and meeting all the other vendors. It was, for me, it was community. That's really what I got so much out of it. Of course, listening to the experts as well, but it was community and the learning as well.
Brilliant. Thank you. And as you say, GSIC, to those that don't know, it's the Galactic Spiritual Informers Connection, which is a massive annual conference where anything UFO, spiritual, any truth in the military that's hidden, any space program, anything that we as a being have the right to know that has been hidden, we reveal and we disclose at this conference. And there's many things at the conference that if we say online, we get shut down. So we obviously have conferences for many reasons, but I love the way that the attendees come, and there's so many of them, every bit is qualified to be on that stage with our magnificent speakers, our global speakers who bring their truth, who bring their evidence. And as you know, this year we had vendors for the first time. And you were one, and you were bringing the Palladium blanket and wrapping people up. You and Paulette and Saverio wrapping people up in the Pleiadian blanket, which was great. And it was so lovely because we'd never done that. It was our first year. And I love that you, say about everyone kind of coming together, and people could leave the auditorium, come sit down, take a breath. And, when people came to your stall, what were they asking, saying? What were they in need of, do you feel, at that moment?
Well, I think the thing is about the wellness blanket, because it was sort of the palladium that was rediscovered through the Russian cosmonauts. And what it does, it sort of blocks off EMFs. And we are all surrounded by electromagnetic frequency, and some of it is not so positive, with Wi-Fi and 5G. And so you can literally put this beautiful blanket and you just feel cocooned, you feel supported back into Mother Earth. It also has some infrared technology inside it. So it allows your body to warm yourself up a little bit, and it brings you more back into homeostasis. It's very, very calming. So I think people enjoyed coming just to sit down and have a relax, a reset, like a sort of a bodily reset, an energetic reset, because, it's inspiring when you're around all these amazing people talking galactic stuff, so sometimes we need that little bit of downtime, even if it's for 5 minutes. So I think we were pretty busy with people coming down and having that 5-minute reset.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's so nice. You can go somewhere and have that reprieve, for a few minutes, and I made sure there was enough room at the back of the auditorium so people could just go and literally lie down if they wanted. And then we had Jeff Woolman, of course. Yeah. He was there, Dr. Jeff Woolman, and he had people laying down on beds, and they were relaxing. I remember walking through the vendor rooms at one point, just so I was in blissful state, just feeling the level of relaxation. And we had all this very high-end technology for healing the immune system, the body. And it was just so wonderful to see, this ancient technology that we're reclaiming back on our planet. There's a lot of people, Georgie, who are waking up to innate gifts that they've carried from different lifetimes. And those gifts become released, as you know, in the cellular memory. We get inspiration as children. And we're going to talk a little bit today, as well as the astrology for December, we're going to talk about your artwork. And how is it, do you think? Like, I consider you a complete master, truly. And just for people to know, the painting behind this great man is one that he did. I'm going to put you on full screen. Take us through some of your beautiful portraits, paintings, and tell us about them. And how did you know you had this ability in you?
Well, it's an interesting one. Can you see my screen
Yes,
now? So, what do you see?
I see a beautiful African man in his robes.
Okay, see that's okay. So you've got that one. I see. Perfect. So this is a portrait I did of the former president of Nigeria. I mean, I must have done this now 7, 8 years ago, and it's an 8-foot tall portrait. And painting his babruska is this amazing satin outfit. And I'm very inspired by the High Renaissance and the Mannerist painters like Caravaggio and all those amazing artists from Italy from the 1600s. And then, of course, more in a more modern sense by John Singer Sargent. I just went to his exhibition in Boston a few days ago, and it was outstanding. It was the best collection of Sargent's ever amassed in a single collection, over 100 incredible portraits. And my inspiration comes from many different artists, but definitely from the Caravaggios, from Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci in particular, and obviously more modern artists like John Singer Sargent. And it's about the chiaroscuro technique. And it's always been about light for me, Dani. I think in a way, from the moment I was born, I was fascinated with light. And I think that's a past life thing, if you want to put it in that way, in those terms, with all these pictures. Let's go back, actually. Hang on. You see, it's all about light. And this is a painting I did of Thea Leone. She took the part of Madam Secretary, if you remember. There's quite a popular TV series. And I painted her on set. It was such fun in New York about 6 years ago, probably now.
Did you paint her on set? Did you say on the film?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Why were you there?
Well, we became quite close, and she just asked, how do I go back to that? Hang on, I'm so bad at knowing how to go back. I haven't got a clue how to go back. Oh my God.
Right. You know what? This is just astonishing. They almost look like photographs, George, but what are the mediums that you're using here? There we are.
They vary. Now here we go. So this was acrylic and acrylic, gesso, and epoxy resin on canvas. So it's all about light. And when you work with light, things do start to look more photographic because you start to manipulate light. It's like manipulating energy. I mean, I wish I could blow this up because actually it's quite abstract when you get close. Do you see? Mm-hmm. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
It's not actually that photographic up close. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
But when you pull back, it is. And I think that for me is something I'm very fascinated by because people have always said my paintings look like photographs, my photographs look like paintings. I kind of want to shock people into stop getting into the left brain. How are you what does it evoke in you? That for me, it's like the light captures something godlike, gets us close to source. It brings out the best in us. Let me find another. This one, for example, let's look at the fabric. Can you see?
Yeah, it's so special. George, why were you painting the president of Nigeria?
Well, he asked me to paint. I met him at a conference, and he said, I mean, he just liked, I guess, he was actually quite fascinated with my conversation. I think I treated him like a human being. I mean, I knew who he was. It was a conference at the United Nations. I was still a little sleepy poos, to be honest with you. But he was fascinated by the conversation, and he just invited me to continue it at a private time afterwards. And that's when he said, well, I'd love you to paint me. And so I did it, and I presented this portrait at his big opening in London. He had it for he had a big presidential office. I can't remember now. I remember Peter Mandelson gave the speech. And then I came up onto the stage and presented this large portrait, and he absolutely loved it. It was and then I gave a little talk about light and spirituality and meeting the man where he was then. You see, I try and meet the person as they are then. I'm not just focusing on the past, the stories.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me is the healer I try and tap into, because it's almost like by meeting someone who they are now, it gives them the opportunity to be their higher self, because the judgment isn't as severe.
Yeah.
His middlemen didn't like me, you see, because I was in the way. I wasn't going
Right.
through
Well,
the right channels.
yeah,
I
you're
think,
a white boy getting involved with the president of Nigeria, and that's very much a managed and handled country, as we know. So,
yeah, but also there's also, I'm sure, a naivety on my part too, even if I'm fascinated by politics and philosophy. I approach it as an artist who's also deeply fascinated with where the soul is in
yeah.
the journey through the flesh. And in some ways it's very freeing, but it is also probably quite intolerable to certain people who are so solely conducting themselves within the third dimension, because I'm not boxable. And so I'm sure it's quite infuriating. But anyway, it was very fascinating to capture this man. I really enjoyed the conversations I had with him. And then let me show you a few. This was Pippa Middleton. I painted her in her house with her dog. I rather feel I caught the dog quite well.
So what were you doing at Pippa Middleton's house? And for those that don't know, she is the sister of Princess Catherine, or the Princess of Wales. Obviously,
Yeah.
once Diana was assassinated, William, her son, married Catherine, and this is her sister.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, this was a long time ago, and I just was, I got the opportunity to paint her, and it was an interesting experience. I'm not going to go too much into that now, but it was I was trying to capture again the human side as opposed to the side that to do with human perception. We all have such strong perceptions of who people are. And of course, people change. I mean, this is some time ago now. This is probably 6, 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So
Interesting, George, because there's going to be some people that watch this now that have been obviously influenced by what they've been watching on YouTube, and there's those that say that they're all evil and this, but they don't know anything. They're only watching and listening, and that they have no proof. They just make up these ideas and then they suddenly move on. They get aggressive because they don't have the whole story. So, I'm open-minded. I'm like, well, what were you doing at Pippa Middleton's house? And what were you doing at the United Nations? We know there's corruption in all of these systems, bar none. But I know there's no darkness in you, my love. And
I mean, no, I mean, I think again, it's interesting you wanted me to share about my art, because in some ways it's just coming from a very, very beautiful perspective, actually.
Yeah, sure.
Genuinely trying to understand who is really, for me, what's the soul. So, for example, this one of Caroline Myss, and she's one of the most famous medical intuitives in the world, and I just got to know her. And it was fascinating to paint her. She came to my studio, sat for me in New York. And to be honest with you, we got on very well. I don't think she particularly she told me she liked the picture, but I did capture her hand. Hang on, let's go back. Sorry. And I know I made her hands a little old, but I feel they were very powerful. They're very potent. It's not a very good quality photograph of the painting here. But I captured her wisdom and her strength. And I don't know, there was something very mystical about her emerging from the darkness.
Yeah. I mean, she's given a lot of real deep insight into archetypes, of course, and she's been part of a lot of people's spiritual training and understanding. As some say, she can be a bit of a moody cow, and if that's true.
Well, I experienced. I mean, that is true. I mean, again, the artist in me, in this sense, really wants to see the full expression of the archetype. I happen to know all these people's astrology because that's how I do the portrait. I do their astrology first. I mean, we're talking a double Sagittarius Gemini here. And she's definitely like a matron archetype. She can be quite cruel. I don't think she means to be, but that fire, when it's unleashed at times, can be quite intense. But she's a genius. And now I haven't spoken to her for 3 or 4 years properly. So I've slightly lost touch. And of course, the world's changed since 2020. And her approach to the pandemic, who knows? And I think the thing is, I'm not talking about Caroline here, Caroline Myss, but I think there are a lot of people who were the great teachers of yesteryear are not really able to serve in quite the same way going forward into the new earth, depending on how what their position has been within the last 3 or 4 years vis-a-vis the pandemic.
That's a very good point. Very good point. And, Deepak Chopra, again, on the same alignment, but Jack Canfield, Deepak Chopra, Wayne Dyer, Doreen Virtue, and Deepak Chopra, he took the Jabadoo and fired everyone around him. I know this firsthand. I know this personally. I witnessed it. I'm aware of it. He was one of the greatest spiritual gurus on the planet, apparently. But if people didn't take the enforced mandatory medicines via his instruction, they lost their job. So that's what happened. So yeah, like you say, some of the people from yesteryear, they don't fit the evolvement. They were great. We learned so much. They were a wonderful training. And now there's many that we don't go back to their teachings anymore. Who's this chap? He looks interesting.
Well, this is Bob Thurman, of course. Robert Thurman, Uma Thurman's father, who's head of Tibet House. And a great intellect. He sat for me in Tibet House. I did his astrology. A really learned man. And I wouldn't say I know him well. I mean, we stay vaguely in touch via email. I think he enjoyed the portrait. He enjoyed the conversation around the astrology. But I definitely caught him. I mean, I think I captured that intellectual. I mean, I quite like the hands.
Yeah. Tell people what Tibet House is, George.
Tibet House is, I suppose he's very tied up to the Dalai Lama in this sense with how he represents the Tibetan Buddhist philosophy and religion, the doctrine and all that within the Americas. And he's like a guardian, really, of a lot of the scriptures and a lot of the information here in York. Tibet House is here in Midtown in New York City. And then, of course, he's connected to those wonderful monasteries up in the Catskills, the Buddhist Tibetan monasteries. I do think it's important for people to realize that actually the West and America in particular has played a very significant role in the protection of certain amount of Tibetan manuscripts and information that has been taken out and protected from the Chinese Communist Party over the last, 5 or 6 decades. Now, this isn't an area of expertise of mine at all. I really don't, I'm not a practicing Buddhist at all. I'm just me capturing people who I find rather fascinating and then who come into my orbit. Yeah. And I actually asked to paint him. He didn't ask me. I wanted to paint him. So sometimes I get asked to paint. Other times, like this example, I wanted to paint him because I was curious by the opportunity. It helped me develop more of a perspective on globalism, on art, but also on religion and how it's used for good and for ill. And, Buddhism is very interesting because in some ways it's not strictly speaking a religion in the sense of a revealed religion like the Abrahamic faith. Yeah. The doctrines are quite so strong. That kind of appeals to me because it's more like Gnosticism. It's more esoteric. But I'm not saying it's not totally like that. I mean, having spent time in Bhutan, it's very, very prescriptive as well. And people follow the doctrine very strongly. So there are strong parts to it. But for me, there's more breadth in Buddhism in some ways because people aren't quite so judgy on how people do it. Where, when you meet a strong Christian, a strong Jew, a strong Islam, I'm going to use the word heavy because there is a natural say, no, this is the way, and that's not the way. There's a judgment which comes out first. And for me, as someone who is spiritual, but wary of religion, because religion today is more about the doctrine first and the practice second. I'm about the practice first and the doctrine support the practice. And I believe Christ was about the practice first and the doctrine supports the practice. Without the practice, there is no religion. There's just fundamentalism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Brilliant.
So having the opportunity, Dani, to talk to these masters, these great people, Caroline Myss and, Bob Thurman, has definitely helped me perhaps become a little wiser.
Brilliant. Okay, let's see who else you have. I'm very excited.
Let's go back. Hang on. I'm sorry, me and technology edge.
And I'd rather you do it than me.
No, I understand. Hang on. Let's go. There we go. We had let's go to the King and Queen of Bhutan. No, they were rather. I really enjoyed painting. This is the Queen Mother of Bhutan. I loved painting her fabric.
I mean, you painted that, George. You painted
Yeah.
this. You didn't paint over a photograph. You painted on a white.
I work from photographs.
Yes, I know, but you're not painting over a photo. It's so
no.
good, is my point.
Thank you so much. Yeah. No, this took a long time. That was the most detailed painting I think I've ever done. I mean, this took a long, long time to do. You can see, look at all the brush work, brush strokes.
So beautiful. And how did you end up painting the King and Queen of Bhutan? And where is Bhutan for those that don't know, or Bhutan?
Well, so Bhutan is definitely one of my favorite countries. Originally, I was invited to go there. Well, actually, originally, I went there with my former wife on a vacation. We went on a month vacation, and it was incredible. I mean, I'm also a very keen photographer, and I'm a professional. I certainly would count myself as one of my areas is photography. And I took some fantastic photographs in Bhutan that first trip, and I did some lovely watercolor sketches. Actually, we could get to that as well, just to show those in a minute. And I came back, and then a few people started to see these photographs and paintings. And then Bhutan, there was an organization that contacted me, and the man who ran it was friends with the royal family. And I got them to meet them, and then I started to do their astrology and the snowball. And then I did the paintings, and it's these things kind of happened over a period of years. And then what was such fun is I was also asked to be like an ambassador, if you can call it that, for happiness, because I was fascinated with the metric of gross national happiness, not gross domestic product, which really measures the cost of everything, but the value of nothing. What I liked about gross national happiness, and it was created by this man's father, who's still around. He abdicated and for his son, but he's still, in a way, the king, Wangchuck IV. And this is the young Jigme Wangchuck, the current king, a very handsome young man. He's got beautiful wife and children. I also did a family portrait of them as well, which I haven't got in this link. And Bhutan's a very spiritual place, and it's cut off from the rest of the world. I mean, it's got a strong connection to India, and it's right on the Tibetan border. I mean, historically, it is connected to Tibet. It's known as the left heel of the left foot of Tibet. But I just got this opportunity to be one of the ambassadors. So I speak at the Happiness Summit in Miami and in the United Nations on happiness and what that means spiritually. And that was very interesting. But I only did that for a while, because then I started to realize I wasn't getting very far, because actually the people running the show in these organizations, that's when I started to wake up around 2015. And by 2016, I had fully awoken in this regard to the reality that we were all being used. And I remember one time, and this is something I must share, is at the World Happiness Summit. I gave a talk for about 15 minutes on happiness and the spirituality of happiness, and every other speaker was speaking about the science of happiness. And it was one of the rare occasions I got a standing ovation. People really resonated with what I said, and people came up to me after that, but I was never invited back. And I know why. It makes total sense, because no, George, you should not be speaking on the spirituality of happiness. It is the science metric, left brain only, that we can do, so we can control it. And it was another form of controlled control system. And you and I know, we don't need to talk. Your listeners know all about that. And I think, so today you've asked me to share about my artwork. In some ways, this is a journey through my own awakening as well. It's I have to be very honest. Most of these paintings, not all, but most of them were painted between 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. I saw the timeline shift in 2016, because that's what happened. The timeline changed. It came congruent, however one wants to look at it, galactically. they merged. There wasn't there, and it coincides with the election of 2016. It coincides with 2012 and the Mayan prophecies because of time travel, and my awakening was very rapid in around 2016. I saw Trump win in about 2014, 2015. I got that hunch, as we all do, many of us. And I saw Brexit a year after that, which was a year before it actually happened. And I think that there's something that suddenly started to click for me around 2016. And by 2017, I think I was kind of really on the road to awakening. And that's, of course, when I fell out with New York, or New York started to fall out with me. And that's when really I became persona non grata in many of these places. And my painting commissions pretty much dried up. And I had no painting commissions at all from 2018 onwards, because all the people who were commissioning me were certainly not going to entertain me with my views anymore. So it was quite, in that sense, this is important, because that little story, which is unique to me, is absolutely true for all of you.
Yeah.
You've all got your version of that, absolutely. And for me, it was like the artist figuring it out, naive. Human beings, archetypes. It's why I study archetypes. It helps me understand you and him, Tom, Dick, and Harry. I go more, because I have a Pisces thread to my Aries, I go more to naivety rather than cynicism. So I naturally would have trusted more rather than trusted less.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn as I've got wiser. No, but I still I'm a dreamer. I still believe, like, when you look at these portraits, because this is an amazing man, the king, but powerless at the same time. I mean, Bhutan is a tiny wee country high up in the mountains of the Himalayas, and it doesn't do global politics. And of course, everyone was wearing a mask during the lockdown, and they all shut down, and they're all very compliant, like Costa Rica, beautiful people, but not really thinking for themselves. And that's where leadership is so critical. When we can have good leadership, we can elevate the consciousness through that leadership. And that's what I pray for, as we all do constantly for the future, is the leadership of tomorrow is going to be so empowering. Think of what Alex Collier teaches us all. And I'm, an avid Friday listener, as you know. I get so much of my wisdom from that man. He's not the only mentor from afar, but he's certainly up there at the moment. And we really are the law of consistency. We are going to be able to educate the young in the future in a way that we haven't been able to do for so long. And that's where the civilization is going to start to improve exponentially fast.
Very true. All right, let's have a look at some more.
Let's jump a little bit to now. Let's jump. So this is more my epic, fantastical, archetypal Neptunian. So this is the age of Pisces. This is the end of Pisces. This is called the end of Pisces. It's acrylic on canvas. And what I'm doing here is, you've got this feminine archetype. I'm actually really capturing Hebe, which is part of the myth of the Aquarian age. It's a feminine archetype rather than using the male Olympian archetypes. I'm using something pre-Olympian here, Hebe, and she's really washing away the age of Pisces. Now, the age of Pisces got off to a great start with someone called Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ, the great mystic, Essene, Christ consciousness, bringing it to humanity to help in our ascension. But something happened along the way, and basically we got delayed. And the inversion of Pisces is separation. The inversion of Pisces is delusion, addiction, self-undoing, and and delusion and isolation. There's one other word, it's like fantastical, but it's an inversion of religion. And the great religions, in my mind, have really distorted the truth. Yes, they have snippets of truth in all of them, and they have beautiful, beautiful things for people to cling on to and to learn from. But for me, the last 2,000 years has been really not what it's about. And it's being washed away. And we see this with the light code coming in. We see this with the photonic light coming in, that Pam Gregory so beautifully talks about on her podcasts. We see it in the sense of the age of Aquarius, which is coming in now, is sweeping away a distorted understanding of the Piscean age, because the Pisces age should have been very magical, should have been very, very mystical and beautiful. And it was, some of the stuff was created amazing in the high Renaissance period. And I still paint in that very similar style of the Mannerists and the Sargents and all those, Caravaggio. I'm very inspired by the great epic. But really, religion did not serve humanity. So what is Hebe doing? She's sweeping away the temples, the mosques, the churches, and a new religion is going to be born. And this is when I get to the birth of Aquarius. Here we have her bursting out. It's actually an air sign. So yes, it kind of feels watery, but it's about the vapor coming up into the air. It's this burst of new ideas. Mercury is exalted in Aquarius. It's the birth of a whole new, and it's technological, but it's also galactic. And you can see rock formations in the background, and maybe there's stuff coming out from underground. Civilization is not just upstairs, it's downstairs. It's the ant people, as you've told me about. It's also the Pleiades and Andromedas and all the great galactic families that we come from. And so this whole sense of hope. It is the star card, if you think of the great arcana in tarot. She's really birthing something new, and we do have radical hope for the future, where the individual is celebrated within the collective psyche.
Beautiful.
And then, this is another, the water bearer, a new beginning. This is another interpretation of, with the temples in the background, the beauty and the waves and the light, ushering. She's actually holding some doves, they're like little butterfly doves. You can see there's a lot of hope. And then this is a big one, the deluge. I tried to paint all the different archetypes here. This is a 10-foot long painting I did. Now, this is mixed media. So, for example, everything around the people is a painting. And then what I did, I photographed all these different models in my studio in Manhattan. This was all done in 2014, 2015. And then I painted around them, and then I printed them onto a large canvas. And then I painted the water scene around it. So it's mixed media, this one.
Oh, fascinating. I mean, it's like something from the Renaissance period.
Yes.
We've
yes.
now, like you say, Caravaggio and, others at that level of ability, Michelangelo, so many others. It's just so, it's so stunningly striking and shocking.
Thank you. And it's got all the different archetypes in there, from high vibration to low frequency, here's the Buddha in all of us, the meditative, contemplative, man really understanding how to connect to source, with an erect spine, to really, through the breath work, through healthy eating. And then, of course, the tragedy of a low frequency, could be a low frequency Scorpio or whatever, it's all here, we are it all. And we have a choice, in a way, as to how we're going to activate the archetype. So that's quite a nice, interesting one. This one I've called Andromeda and Ophelia. It's funny. This is very Piscean, because obviously this reminds me of Mill on the Floss. Actually, I remember I loved that book. I was younger, because Maggie, she drowns in the water on the floss, and there's something about the age of Pisces, the suicide. So many great people don't cope, you see, with the world, and sometimes we lose the very best. The empathic people go first because they can't sustain this heavy frequency of the planet. But I just always say to them, hang on now, it's fine, it's nearly there. People like you are going to be needed so much more in the new earth, and you're going to be seen for who you are for the first time in so long. This is very watery, this picture. This is very much about to be in acts of service and intuition, psychic ability, stuff like that.
So beautiful. Pisces, Aquarius.
Yeah, I mean, this I just absolutely love. There's something, I'm very happy the way I painted this. I'd like to do more of this. I haven't painted something like this for a long time. It does remind me of a different era with the angels, and just love. I think for me, I'm so motivated by the connection between two souls.
Mm.
I mean, for me, sex is always between two people. It's always been quite clear for me that, and it's the connection that one can have with another person is so profound when it can lean into spirit as well. The alchemy really is, we don't know this on this planet yet, and this one is a truly amazing, master of Kundalini and tantric sex, really, and the ability to alchemize the spirit with the physical. This is what we have to all start to learn and lean into as a civilization in the new age. And I know many teachers will start to emerge in this. The guilt in sex is so pervasive in our global culture. It doesn't matter if it's in a Hindu or a Western culture, or even in the corrupted native cultures, because they've been so polluted and corrupted from the outside in, right? So there's a whole new learning to be done about just the beauty of the connection when it's celebrated at the highest, most integrated frequency. And I think I'm trying to capture something there between two souls. It doesn't matter if it's two men, two women, a man, a woman. The point is, it's that unity consciousness. And I put the angel on one of them because it's like, well, that's our spirit side connecting to our physical side. And when it's so beautiful, because you've got two women there, actually, and then here you've got a woman and a man. And to me, there's a sacredness in the connection between two people. That's really what I'm interested in. I don't get caught up in all that, tit for tat, black, white, gay, straight, Muslim, Jew. It's a very clever program to keep us divided. And obviously, all your listeners know that better than any of them. So we don't even need to discuss it.
Exactly.
So there's that, and then I've got sort of like water paintings, which I just love painting water.
It's so wild and beautiful. And again, it's just amazing how, you are able to paint something that looks so lifelike, really like, and to even capture the movement of water is an extraordinary discipline and talent that, like you say, you feel has come from past life talent that you've brought through here. Who would you say that your paintings remind you more of if you were to compare? I mean, there's several different styles that you have, but who would you say? And it's fine to say, George.
I genuinely don't know, because I can tell you the painters that I love, but I'm not sure. I mean, I went to Leonardo da Vinci's museum and home in France when I was a 15-year-old boy, an 18-year-old boy, a 20-year-old man. And I was just fascinated with his inventions, his science. He was a Renaissance man extraordinaire. So I've always been fascinated by that person. But I wouldn't say my art is like his, because I don't think I've perfected it. I don't think I've had enough time doing it yet. But I'm inspired by it. But I mean, I love Caravaggio with his chiaroscuro, his light. And Correggio. I like so many, Parmigiano. I like Rubens. I mean, gosh, I mean, I love Rembrandt. I mean, I'm here in New York, and the Rembrandt's at the Frick and the Metropolitan Museum of Art are outstanding. I mean, I've just been to Boston to see John Singer Sargent. I mean, obviously this is a more contemporary artist in the sense of the last 150 years. And I mean, the way he paints portraits and light is unbelievable. But I don't think I could possibly say my art's like him yet, because I haven't reached that mastery yet. I think it's a bit different. But this, for example, this painting, I mean, I grew up on the sea in Cornwall. I love big seas. I'm petrified of them, to be honest with you. I remember I was crossing the English Channel in a storm, and I took some photographs with my old analog camera years ago. This is when I was in my mid-20s. And I tell you, we were all sick. It was so choppy. It was a force 10, 11 gale. And this was a painting I did from that memory. Now I took a bunch of photographs, but look, it's pretty intense, isn't it? When you get up close, it's pretty all squiggles.
Very. And also interesting the fact that, it's 20 minutes to cross the channel from England to France. I mean, in Eastbourne, Sussex, you can stand on the shore and see France. It's not that far of a body of water, in terms of getting there as quickly as possible. But yeah, the amount of turbulence and destruction that can occur in a short body of water is quite remarkable. You captured it beautifully there.
And, and this is a diptych which I just love, with the light coming through here. And I wish these photographs were better quality. I'm sorry, they really, they're not so good quality on this Zoom screen. Oh, this is a fun one. This is a better quality one. But look at the way I've painted the wave. It's so, this, all the colors are so, that's so beautiful when you do a close up.
Yeah.
Do you see how, it's magical, really, to like a freeze frame of a wave, and yet you pull back from it. It's very realistic, right? But when you get up close, it's quite abstract.
Yeah, it looks like a being, a beautiful, magical being, just, coming through the water.
Maybe it's our Lemurian heritage. You see, this is interesting. You and I, we met at a Lemurian conference, really, didn't we? You were speaking, you were the keynote speaker at Huna Flashes. It's funny, there's something about the return to Lemuria. It appeals to the Pisces thread that I have in me, because it's all about water and consciousness. I mean, Veda Austin's work, I just love. She freezes water into vials, and she can show, as Dr. Moto's done, but she takes it much further, it shows the consciousness. The water carries consciousness, living consciousness. It will take on the image of what is being discussed or felt around the water. Once we understand that, because we're 95% water when it comes to actually molecular structure, yes, we may be 70% on a more physical level, but we really are these amazing conductors. And when we understand water, we can start to heal ourselves from the inside out. So I think in that sense, painting water for me, this is why this is a Uranian, I call it exuberance. It reminds me of the sperm which created Aphrodite, from Uranus's chopped balls by his naughty son Saturn. I sometimes I look at this. It's very abstract, this painting. If you see, they're almost like little faces in here. And then, when you pull back, it's a little bit more, representative and realistic. But I think that's what I've enjoyed about when I'm painting, is up close. It is a little different and abstract, and you can see other things in it. And then up from a distance, you really see it as just the wave.
Totally.
And then the last one would be this one. When I was in Bhutan, I just loved painting all the landscapes and the buildings. These are all watercolors on like Chinese watercolor paper. I mean, they were very thin little sketches. I mean, some of them are more finished. Like, for example, this one was more finished, but a bit spooky, But, and this is a zong. It's a zong. It's a big spiritual temple in a place called Paro. And it's Limpung Zong. Yes, it's outside Paro. So these are more moods. These are very Neptunian, I suppose, where the land and the sky meets through the clouds. It's very etheric.
The Himalayas, or the Himalayas, as some people
pronounce
the Himalayas.
Yeah, I mean, to us in English, it's the Himalayas, but they do say Himalaya.
Himalayas, yeah.
In Nepal, in Nepali, and in Bhutan. But this is a very different style. I guess for me, sometimes I'm adapting also to the culture. I mean, maybe there's a bit more of a Japanese Asian influence here too, which if it's true, I quite like that. I remember my father said to me when I started painting properly when I was about 14, 15, he said, George, you paint like, some Japanese artists from the 1700s. And he rattled off a few of the names. And of course, I didn't know who they were at the time. And I do actually think I was probably channeling a little bit with my watercolors some of those Asian artists, because especially with watercolor, they were so adept at it. See, very subtle. This is all it's very different from the portrait painting or the sea painting. And also it's a different medium. It's on very light gouache. This is on American paper, but very thin paper. So that gives you an idea. That's just a few of the paintings.
So special. And again, you know, these beautiful gifts, they're for sale. You're available for commissions. I mean, you really are a special artist, and it's just such an honor to be able to share some of your work. Is there another particular portrait you'd like to show before we move on to the astrology part?
I could show you one more. This is my most recent painting, which I'm very, very pleased with. I finished it 2 days ago. Can you see this?
Indeed,
So
indeed.
this is my darling Saverio, and it's
So I have met Saverio in person,
yeah.
and you have captured him beautifully.
Thank you so much.
I mean, he
Yeah,
just looks
I'm very
angelic.
pleased with.
Yeah.
I'm very inspired by the Caravaggio style with chiaroscuro, and this it's all about light for me. So I do feel I've captured him quite soulfully. His sun is in Cancer, and there's definitely a very strong Cancer thread I feel in this particular portrait.
Mm. So share the copper and the shungite, because I think that's really important for us to recognize what we're moving into as
Yeah.
the world is evolving, what we're going to be pulling in our day-to-day things that we have around us.
So it's interesting you mentioned this. We were talking about that just before we went on air. I use quite a lot of shungite now in my paintings, and in this one I've used some copper, tiny bits of copper particles into the paint. You can't really see it in this particular, but I've used it in the shadow of the darkness of his face, and it's giving him a really interesting glow. Copper is also connected to Venus, and he has a very strong Venusian thread as an archetype in him, his appreciation of beauty and art, and really the pleasures of what this planet can produce in terms of high art. And I have that in common with him. So I felt the copper, which is pertains to Venus, was quite sort of symbolic to paint him with that copper. Like, for example, tin would be connected to Jupiter, and lead would be connected to Saturn, and iron would be connected to Mars, etc. You see, there are all these correspondences, and the ancients knew all this, and I think we're rediscovering that. So for me, there's a very strong Venusian thread to this, as well as a lunar thread, because of course the moon rules Cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, George, it's so important that we are having this discussion, that we are bringing more awareness in to the beautiful audience that is attracted to my channel and to you. And I'm so proud to host you and share, because we've never done this before. We've done several broadcasts. We've never actually shared your ability to paint and create art in the way that you do. Let's have a little look at the astrology before we come back to a few notes that I made. So please, December astrology.
Yeah. So with the astrology, I mean, the big things are still playing out. The Pluto's in the last degrees of Capricorn. So we're going to see this continual chip away at everything to do with institutions. And you really got to think big institutions. It doesn't matter if it's any of the media broadcasting houses, whether it's corporations and banks. And then, of course, talking of banks and finance, we have the Uranus and Jupiter both in Taurus. Taurus rules money. It rules other things too, but Uranus is total black swan events, change in money. We're moving into the quantum financial system. Now, none of us can say, and Dani and I, we've all talked about this. No one should and can predict when it's going to happen, but it is happening. And that I do know, and that's a bone thing. My inner self knows that we are in a stage of massive transformation. And as Jupiter gets closer to Uranus, and he'll make an exact conjunction in April, May next year, we will see the ushering in of some new financial system. I don't know what that's going to look like, but that I think we're going to call it the quantum financial system. And Taurus does rule gold and silver, I think, and we're already starting to see it. The Netherlands Bank has officially declared it's backing itself with gold and silver. That's a big deal, because the fiat currencies pulled away from gold and silver in the 1970s, as we know. And then, of course, we've got some of the countries like El Salvador, who've taken on Bitcoin as their main currency, and even other countries now are going to start trading in Bitcoin, and the BRICS countries are already doing that, and they're silver and gold backed as well. So that's what we're looking to see with Uranus and Jupiter getting closer and closer. And of course, if we know our myth, Saturn tends to always be in opposition to Jupiter. Jupiter expands where Saturn contracts. Saturn has been very powerful for the last 4 years. He's kind of run the show during the pandemic. He's now in his fall, he's in Pisces, and he won't like to be in Aries either after Pisces. We're going to have quite a while of Saturn not very strong. There's another indication of the men in grey suits, as Princess Diana called them, or the deep state, or whoever you want to describe the fixed hidden bureaucracy of running the show on this planet. It's up for change. It's a very exciting time. And even if the mainstream media is blurting out with its big horn that it's all going to be doom and gloom to keep us in fear, really, when you start to look at it, and the astrology backs it up because it never lies, actually, no, we have a lot to look forward to. We have a lot of hope. And 2024, yes, it's going to be a changing year. And for those who aren't awake, it's going to be very intense because they've got a lot of catching up to do. But for people on your channel, you're the leaders, you're the way showers, and your time is now. Your time is really coming up pretty soon to take the lead and to hold the hand and to really show and live and embody what it is to be in the new Earth, which is being born. Because Pluto in Capricorn isn't just the end of the old civilization; it's simultaneously the birth. It's death and resurrection. Think of Pluto; it's Hades. It's transformation. So let's not just focus on the destruction. Let's focus on the creativity.
Absolutely. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, George. You are just poetry in motion to me in every way. I'm so happy to share you on my beautiful channel. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you mentioned earlier, that you were the happiness person for the Bhutan, for the royal family, for an element of speaking. And as you said, I think incorrectly that you were naive. You weren't naive, George. You were just being purely who you be. But there were people who don't want that joy and that happiness to pervade. They don't want someone full of the understanding of what happiness is, that emits such joy and such frequency, to be imprinting that on other people, because then lest they be freed from the science of the mind and the structure and the rigidity of it all. And so we are in that time where we're seeing there are some different healing techniques or healing machines, and really good people buy them. Good people invest their whole life money, and they invest, and the dark ones behind the machines, they know exactly what they're doing. We are seeing it everywhere. And I think that, people judge so harshly. Now, I was going to talk a little bit about you were saying you were involved in, like with Pippa Middleton, royal family, for example. You shared a beautiful story about Diana, Princess Diana. I love her. I love talking about her. I love feeling her vibrant energy, because she's someone for me who's such a light on the planet. Even if she was a little bugger, it doesn't matter. Who are we to judge? Everybody has their upsies and their downsies. But frequency-wise, I find when I connect into her energy, I can feel a level of love. It gives me goosebumps even now. But I wanted to say that there are people also with the platforms, and they're so good, and but they talk about people, and then people who are on the journey, they believe everything that they say. They believe every single thing they say, and it's such an error. It's such an error. You mentioned somebody, I can't remember who it was, but there's a woman who I really like, and Jessie Zabota, but she said a couple of things about people that now people stay away from those people, because some people are just like so cut and dry. When they hear something from someone they follow, they go, oh, right, because that person said that, So I wanted to share briefly that, how you were pushed out of the New York society because of a bunch of assholes. They stopped your working, they stopped your thriving, they stopped your bringing joy, because they saw you as a danger. Your light was a danger. Well, years ago, and I've told you before, and I've been open about it on my channel too, because people's opinions, well, I don't really care about them. I'll do whatever I want, say whatever I want, because I'm always telling the truth. I worked with a group of people, 100 of us, every month, 100 of us in Oceanside, California, teachers, headmasters, headmistresses, governors, good people, really good people. And there were some there that only came because they wanted to meet Stedman Graham. Stedman Graham is connected to Oprah Winfrey. Everybody knows her on the planet. So I worked every month, once a month, with the same people. I was on the board, on the steering committee with Bobby DePorter, Stedman Graham, and I never saw a darkness in that man. I got on great with him. I got on great, never saw a dark, never. But because someone like Jesse Zabota talks about Oprah, I don't know Oprah. I believe everything they say on that channel. I believe the negative they say about the actions that that woman and people do. I do. But I physically, personally met Stedman, and I've never met anyone who's met him in person, apart from all the people I'm still in touch with, you know, Halise Bridges, Bobby DePorter, Starla Lewis. She was 9 times professor, beautiful African-American woman. So people have an idea and then they go, oh, well, you were connected to Stedman Graham. Yeah, every month for 4 years. And I never saw one negative thing. And I'm not going to shy from it, because what people have done, when I openly said that, nothing to hide, they made my life hell. They accused me of the most vile Black things you could not even imagine. And people believed it. Stupid people believed. They believed it. And at this stage, if they're not listening to like what we're saying and how corrupted your people have got no way to think, they believe one person and everything they say. What were you going to say, George?
Well, I mean, I think what I've learned from all this, because we've all had unique experiences basically of the same thing, is we just, to quote Alex Collier, we have to love them at a distance. And I think truth does come out. I mean, as Dave on X22 says, you know, propaganda is very shiny and it has a lot of money behind it, but it never lasts the full duration. Truth eventually comes out. And, you know, you're a truth teller. And so for me, yes, I've been shadow banned. Yes, I've been debunked, or whatever it's called, sent away from New York society because of my beliefs. But actually, I'd do it again tomorrow, because for me, I'm about truth. You're about truth. In that sense, I'm actually very calm on it. Yes, there are times I cry and I feel lonely. Absolutely. I'm not going to pretend to you that I'm Mr. Tough the whole time. But at the end of the day, I would do it again if I had to repeat it, because there is only one way. And that's why the art, that's why this is why spirituality, this is why the galactic, because it's an opening of the artichoke to get to the heart.
Amazing. And, you know, again, when we watch someone and they say one thing about someone and we go, oh, because I like that person, they said this about this person, now that means I have to believe them. And I'm really inviting people just to open your mind even more. Just open your mind even more. If I'd seen one single dark thing, and I'm not defending Stedman, I've not been in touch with him since 2016. And if I'd seen one negative thing, I'd be like, shit, yeah, I saw that. That was really bad. But I never did. I don't actually think they were even together. I think it's a public stunt. That's my feeling, because he never in 4 years ever mentioned her. And God forbid, if anyone tried to get near him to get to her, which a lot of people did, they come up. It was a open public meeting in Oceanside, over 100 people every single month. He would shut them down, never ever spoke about her ever. So I'm like, I don't even think they're together. But anyway, what do I know? I only know what I think and observed. Yeah.
I mean, the deception in the public sphere has been so overwhelmingly successful in every sphere. And I think part of the Great Awakening is us getting into our hearts and actually becoming really much more discerning. And even just apply it to this conversation between you and I. If some people haven't resonated with something I said about one of the art, or that you have a view on something, that's okay. You know, you are allowed to have that. And to me, that makes me and you free.
Yeah.
Because their freedom is so important, because we mustn't be the same. We shouldn't look and see things exactly the same way. But if we can see, as long as we're not doing the satanic, ghastly stuff which has to be eradicated from this planet in order for us to ascend to higher realms of consciousness, let you do you, I do me. And there's the beauty and there's the freedom. And then our children can flourish, because it's no longer stuck in a Saturnian way where everyone has to do it the same thing, or everyone feels guilty, you know. So I'm quite positive about the future.
That's so good. And again, while we're on, you mentioned about water being a literal recorder. water, we are part of that body of water on the
Okay.
planet. There's more water than anything else, because we're not just talking about the oceans and the rivers and the lakes. Underneath, we are all water. We are a water planet. And it's so, go ahead.
No, darling, you're so right. You just get me very enthusiastic because I mean, Veda Austin's been doing this. Let's take this water. Now, obviously, I use a Berkey. I'm here in New York, and actually, I bring water from friends' farms in because you can't always get rid of all the arsenic and the fluoride from everything. But let's take this water. It's relatively pure. And when I put my hands around it, and I, with real intention, bless it and gratitude, it will take a mirror imprint of that frequency. And so when I imbibe it, it's going to heal me more. And Veda Austin has taken Emoto's work a lot further and has proved it just by doing these frozen vials. And I think this is where it's so exciting what's going on, this is the positive of Saturn in Pisces. It's putting structure down into the spirit realm and really understanding consciousness. And water is a fundamental part of it. That's all. I'm basically saying what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's important though. And for those that have never heard of Dr. Emoto, what he would do would take 2 bottles of water, he'd put the word love on one, hate on the other, send love, pure intention to one, and hate to the hate bottle, and then put the molecules under microscope and see the degeneration of the water that had been abused. And then as a reminder to us, full of water, when we talk unkindly to ourselves, we are changing our own internal molecular structure. So we have to knock that off. And also the enemy, again, while everybody who's deliberately trying to manipulate humanity is trying to make us all fight each other, hate each other. I mentioned Stedman, for example, who I'm no longer in touch with, but these people made my life hell and accused me of being a satanic pedophile because they're brainless buttheads, but people believed it. Well, what I want you all to focus on right now is the fact that the World Economic Forum is trying to hijack all the water on the planet, because it's not just a little agency. That's what people need to understand. That Muppet, Klaus Schwab, he's just one of many. Who appointed them? They're all the highest of the high in the Arabian countries. They're all the richest people on the world. They all sit and they all decide what's going to happen on the planet. But I'm very concerned because I saw something last week and I will speak to it. And it was that this man at the WEF, the World Economic Forum, again, who even created it, who even put him there, is saying that they are going to decide how we, the people of our own planet, receive our water, and they will give the people reward of water. They have no right. It is illegal. It is criminal. And people of planet Earth, I urge you, do not stand for it. Do not let yourself be owned by one single person, group, entity, religion. You are a free being. As a free human, you have a right to drink water, clean water, for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, this is very much, you espouse the positive archetype of Pluto moving into Aquarius, which happens next month. And he's fully there at the end of next year until 2042. It's a big deal. And it is totally getting back to the whole point of individual being sovereign once again within the collective, rather than the distorted version is the individual becomes artificially transhumanized within the collective, which is the dystopian version. And this is what the Great Awakening really is about at 80,000 feet looking down, is that individual becoming, we the people, fully sovereign. And that's what we're here to do. And we all do it in different ways. You have your archetypal delivery, which I adore, Dani, and I have mine. I've got, I'm an Aries, but I have a strong Piscean thread, so it's poetic. It verges more towards the melancholic. Luckily, I have a Leo ascendant, which keeps me a little bit up. Otherwise, and you are such a galvanizer of it. You're so passionate, and again, I think some people might be frightened of that because they don't like it. In some ways, people don't sometimes like people who are very raw in their passion. Again, the new earth is about allow them to do them, even if the archetypal vibration is different from one's own. That's why I study the archetypes. It's why I teach the archetypes, because it allows me to see, okay, there's a wonderful rainbow of ways to express Mars, if you like, passion. Dani expresses her Mars in a particular way. I express it in another way. So does Tom, so does Ethel. And that's the joy of it. Wouldn't it be boring if we all did it in the same way?
Oh would be so boring, and I don't think we'd learn anything. And sometimes I think when you just see someone who is just like myself, like honestly, truthfully moved, I move with the emotions that I feel. I don't edit myself. I'm not here to gain friends or make enemies. I don't care. I don't need to care, because beyond all of that, I have this channel. I speak out because I love humanity, and I'm so deeply wounded by the travesty of the enslavement that we've suffered. And if it's the last thing I do, it will be to tell the truth, to bring the love. And if it means that something helps someone inside to wake up, great, but I will continue to do it, you know. And there is no maneth that can tameth thee, you know. And so
you are, in that sense, it's the warrior archetype of defense of the weak and the infirm, and also the people who can't defend themselves. It's mama bear archetype in some ways, but you also have this other side of you, which I've had the privilege and pleasure of witnessing, which is what I would call therapy, Dani, which is deeply intuitive and very receptive. And you know, to me, why I like sharing that side on your show with other people who may not have seen it so much recently, because you don't do so much private therapy work at the moment because you're so busy doing this great, you know, collective project that you're working on, is it shows that we are all multifaceted as human beings. We all have many different archetypes running through us at one time, and that's what I think is very important. You know, none of us are one size fits all. We are all paradoxes within the beauty of life.
That's so beautiful, George, because like you say, you know, look at you, you're this great astrologer. I mean, deeply into the science of it and the reality and the poetry of it and the story of it. And then you have this ability to paint like a friggin' master in different modalities. And that you've been somebody whose light has attracted, some would say, you know, some of the most important people. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant, because we're all important, no one above another. But there's three different elements there that you've expressed in this hour broadcast that we're doing. And again, it's to encourage people. Like when someone says, what do you do? What do you mean, what do I do? But again, it's a program we have to come up with. In the past, it was, what do your parents do? Remember that? The shaming. You see, these programs, we are collapsing them. You know, we are collapsing them all. And so when someone says, what do you do? Well, today I'm talking to George and I'm a broadcaster. I'm actually a qualified journalist. It doesn't matter whether I was or I wasn't. I just happened to be. But you know, today I'm a journalist. You know, earlier I was reading a story online that I've written, my book, Angels, Demons, and Aliens. So I'm an author, but I also care about sharing my experiences so people get their version of self straight with their own self and have a reference point to go to. So I read another story, an experience that I had where a little girl was being attacked by a demonic, and it was sucking her life force out of her. And me and another girl went in and we kicked ass on that energy. So then I'm a, you know, paranormal investigator. I don't have to be put in a box. I refuse it. And I want to encourage people, don't let anyone put you in a box.
No, it's interesting you say that, because your book, I mean, it's funny because I don't really talk about it much, but I did this wonderful children's book for adults called The Boy and the Boy King. And of course, all my painting illustrations inside it. And I painted this obviously pre-pandemic, and it's actually, you see paintings of King Tut being forced to take an elixir, which is like the version of the injection by the masters, you see. And so for me, I like writing as well as painting. For me, it's all like what you're saying. It's all about bringing the truth out in many different modalities. And what I like to share, and thank you for giving me this opportunity on your platform, is we are multifaceted. We really can bring them all together like playing a harp or a flute or something and integrate it, because that's the new earth. We must never be defined by our beliefs or by one thing that we're known for. I am not just an astrologer. I'm not just a painter. I'm not even just me in this body. It's a soul having an experience. And the more we can free ourselves into that, the more we can actually be more creative. And then from that toroidal field from the heart chakra really exist, as opposed from the monkey mind.
I love it. George, can you share a bit more of the book, please? You barely shared a thing with us.
Well,
share the story.
It's called The Boy and the Boy King. and it's about childhood. It's originally written about my son Arthur, and it's fantastical because he travels back in time to play with King Tut, and he has a little bunny, Bun Bun, and Bun Bun is kind of the soul, and Bun Bun's got really wicked, naughty sense of humor, and it's a whole engagement with the boys. They play together, King Tut and the boy king, and Arthur, who's just from New York City. And they learn the magic of childhood, the magic of play and joy. It's funny, it reminds me of the ancient Greek of eudaimonia, which is one of the definitions of happiness. It really means to flourish when we're actually at play. When a human being, whether we're a child or an adult, can be at play, that is when we're most authentic, that is when we're most in our joy, and that is when we're most natural. And I think we want to encourage ourselves to play more. And of course, play, the shadow of that could be, a form of decadence because there's no purpose to it. But really, we do need to lean more into the archetype of playfulness, because that's when we can be in our joy, and that's when we can be most loving, and that's when creativity comes out the most. And so the book really explores that through a pictorial narrative, and it's definitely a children's book for adults as well. It's not just for children.
Of course, yeah. No, that's great. That's really great. I love that. You include your own son and also the young King Tutankhamun.
Yeah.
No, he was supposed to be called Amun at the end. There's been a lot of discussion on Amun, amen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously from people like Elena and Alex, yourself, and so many others, Dr. Sala. I mean, one is learning daily. I mean, the L thing is so fascinating. Anything with L at the end, and the Elohim, and then of course, the Anunnaki and which faction they're in. It is very fit. The religions, you see, I'm going to quote Alex Collier again. At the end of the day, it's about our connection to source, which is God, the primary source. The other gods, they're just slightly other dimensional control systems that have abused their authority on us human beings and actually desecrated and dissolved a lot of our DNA. And we're going to rediscover it. It's not junk DNA. It's just dormant. It's going to be turned back on again. And that's what, your Galactic conference does so well by getting that out there to the people to understand that they are powerful beyond once we clean our systems up. And that's the other thing that I like with the water and the food. I have such compassion in America because the Americans eat such dreadful food because the system makes them eat dreadful food. So how can they activate their pineal gland? How can they have a Kundalini spiritual sexual awakening if their bodies are not in a position to hold that frequency? Once we can cleanse that physically, my gosh, the Americans are going to do so well because there is that spirit here that does still exist of, no, I'm going to be free. And that's why ultimately I do like America is, yes, it lacks that cultural finesse of Italy that appeals so much to my core, but the American spirit is so potent. It's so optimistic. It's so about possibilities.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, America wouldn't lack cultural finesse had they left the indigenous alone for them to grow and develop and all the cultures to come together beautifully. But it was such a focus control issue, and in creating Mount Rushmore, taking their beautiful landmark for all the tribes to come and worship. But that's another conversation. As you know, that was part of my presentation at GISIC, what I feel about that. But I love America. It is a very, very special land, a very special country. And there are so many people here that are so deeply passionate and they're such warriors. And yet they're, look at the old man that's at the head of the door here. That's just a mockery. And I kind of feel sorry for him. He's obviously he's got dementia and he's got a few things wrong with him. And it's interesting when you see some people defending that, you're like, hang on a second. Let's just say that, don't even give him a name of a party, because to me, it's all relevant. They will decide who the president's going to be from year to year.
Unity party.
Right. But if we just look at like Biden as a person, and no matter, it's cruel that they're trotting him out and he's falling over and he can't remember his word and he can't.
I think it's deliberate. I think it's deliberate, though. I think
it's deliberate.
And to wake us all up.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, all the people who listen to you, are fully awake in this regard. But there's still, there are unfortunately enough people within the collective who are so asleep that we have to they have to. I do believe in the plan of Q. I think it's military intelligence on the 3D level, and I think it's time travel on the 5D level. I just have felt that in my bones for 5 years. But the point is, doesn't matter, of course, what I think. It's what you think and what you do with it. And at the end of the day, people are waking up. It's slow, but people are beginning to see the mockery that it is, or with this third or fourth Biden clone iteration.
Again, when people have to boil it down to, because of the programs in them, I've been trying to do broadcasts lately, which really get us to recognize, oh, is that a program? Did something come up in you? Did you get triggered? What's the trigger? Where is it in the body? Is there something to alchemize or dissolve here? And when we talk about Biden, right, as the current, whatever he is, he's being run by Obama, of course, people know that. You know that, right? It's like Obama's second or third term at this point. But then they have to go, oh, well, that means that you're on the Trump side. I couldn't give a toss. Don't put me in what you think, because people can only meet you where they are at their own level. I'm not in a party. I don't care globally. Don't tell me who you are. Show me who you are. And if you're going to take care of the people, you're going to get my attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually what's great is more and more people are coming over to that, what you see as truth, to recognize that actually, because as most people see now, the bird is corrupt, meaning the left wing and the right wing that allows the bird to take flight is deeply cancerous and corrupt. The whole system. Exactly. So I think most people are coming around to that now. And yes, of course, you've got some, ideologues on both sides who are intransigent. But I really think most people are waking up now to know the whole system's spent. And this is Pluto in Capricorn in the final degrees. And it's about creating a whole new set of radically local, decentralized systems on planet Earth for the people to really have full access and transparency with. No more globalism in the sense of control from top down, where people have no understanding, if you're at the top, of what's going on the local level. That's where the corruption has got so dark, and for me insidious, because I think that was deliberately created at some point in order to shift us into an artificially intelligent dystopian world.
Yes,
but this is the greater, the emergency begets the emergence.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, the people of the planet, all of us that have a soul and have a heart and have love for each other and our children and wellness and joy, which is reality, that don't need to be paying bills and taxes and being enslaved by a bunch of turds at the top. No, they're all fired. We will remove them. We are removing them. It is all crumbling, because this is not the earth that we came to inhabit. And we decide collectively, we, the masses, decide. And the little shitheads didn't get that memo, but now we're giving it to them. Now we're reading to them because they're a bit dim. This is what we're doing. And love wins. Love always has, and it always will. And it's really quite simple. Anyway, Georgie, let me come to you, my love, for final thoughts of the day.
Well, I mean, if I may say one thing, it's interesting, because the archetypes are so profound once we can study them. And I long to see a new earth where we can teach the children and us adults simultaneously the archetypes, because I think it will really allow us to see the whole scope of how humans can be, within a conscious expression. Next year, I'm going to be teaching online for the first time a course on the archetypes, on the planetary archetypes. So I would love to share that with you in the new year. For anyone's interested, because it's just such a great way to understand ourselves better, the natal chart, but also just how the myths really play into our own lives. And we are the myths. How does Mars relate to you? How do you use your Mars? Use it for radical sovereignty to teach people freedom, or do you use it for death and destruction and rape and pillage? That's where we have free will. To how we use, the chakras. Do we use it for good or for ill? And the more we can be cognizant of that, the more we can create the new earth.
Absolutely. It's ours to create. We are creators using the energy of love. George H. Lewis, thank you, sir, for sharing your beautiful array of talents, your astrology knowledge, your just beingness, and your art. I will obviously put a link to your artwork here, and note that you are You do take commissions, as you have all around the world, clearly showing and sharing. And so, yes, George H. Lewis is very special. And I love having you on my channel. Thanks for being our resident astrologer.
Lots of love to you, Dan. It's always such a pleasure conversing with you. Lots of love.
You too. Lots of love, my darling. And to you guys out there, have a beautiful rest of your Sunday. It is the 3rd of December, 2023 today. And then this will be coming out on Tuesday, which will be the 5th. Don't hold me to my lack of mathematical knowledge. But looking forward to sharing more with you, and George will be back in January. I will be back further this week with other great people on my channel. Until then, I send you my love, and I'll see you soon.